Happy Monday, Broncos country. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. I'm Bree Maestas here with Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. Guys, we just came off of a fantastic Nuggets dub. How y'all feeling after that late Sunday game?
Truthfully, it feels like I got out of a car accident yesterday. It's absolutely insane. I agree with Charles Barkley that these games are going that late. It's ridiculous. It's insane. I was up until like 2, had to work the next day. I'm exhausted, but it was literally the best basketball game I've ever been to. That atmosphere was amazing. Gobert and Cat heard it the entire night. Shout out to the Nuggets fans. It was insane. I felt like a Knicks fan. People were just saying stuff that didn't even make sense. It was a great time. Zach, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, it was fun. Through kind of sheer luck, we wound up sitting right on top of each other pretty much at the game. So we all got to kind of celebrate the win together. And like Joey said, the energy was amazing. So that's feeling great. Excited to be back with another mailbag episode. I think these are always fun because we get to talk with the fans and everything. And it's like a Zach themed episode because so many of my questions, I just always cut them for time because I'd rather engage with the fan questions. But this time, I think we might finally get into like the grab bag of old Zach questions.
I'll be the judge of that. Also, I got to tell the story of this because the tickets were all purchased at different times and we never
discussed. I'll finish what Bree was saying. Zach, you're muted too. This is crazy right now.
No.
Okay. I think we never discussed. We never discussed who was going to get into the tickets. We never discussed it. It wasn't never discussed. We just happened to all be in the exact same section. Section 112. Zach was literally 2 seats behind me. 2 seats.
1 seat behind you.
One
I was
seat
right
behind me. 2 seats to the right or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Bree was, what was that? Two seats up. So that was crazy.
Yeah, like 2 seats behind you, 1 to the right or something like that. So we were all in a clump together. Sadly, we've lost Bree. But yeah, it was a fun game. I'm excited. I'm actually looking at maybe going to game 2 because that one was so exciting. Yeah,
Hey,
Bree's back.
I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, you guys froze, and I was like, oh, they're both frozen. I'm like, I'm the frozen one. That's all right. We're back. Samuel Castro is in the chat, as always. What's going on? Great Nuggets win last night. That is indeed true, sir. Frankie says, what a save by Joey. I don't know what happened, but congrats to Joey.
He finished your sentence.
I finished your sentence right when I saw you freeze. Yeah, we were all in section 112. But I said section like 50 times on accident.
Well, welcome everyone to an episode of Let's Talk Broncos. If you're not already joining over on the Mile High Sports YouTube or Facebook page, I implore you to do so because then you can join in on the discussion and talk some Broncos along with us. Again, Zach already mentioned it. We're doing a mailbag episode today, so let's just jump right into it. The countdown is going to go off. Don't worry, it's not a doomsday one. The world will not end when it is complete, but LTB will for this Monday evening. Guys, let's get into it. First question up is going to be from a friend of the show, Frankie Abbott. One remaining free agent you'd want Denver to sign, disregarding cap space and cost. So no cost whatsoever discussion here, guys. Go. Who's looming out there that you would like the Broncos to make a swing at if it was at all possible?
Yeah,
I would go Ronald Darby. That's who I would go. Give me Ronald Darby back, especially if his market's down. Why not? The Broncos secondary needs the help. It could easily be a Bryce Callahan situation, I think, where he's going to sign for damn near nothing, and him being a good football player. He's coming off of injury. Obviously, that's concerning, definitely concerning. But I don't think I would sign him to be a starter on this team. I think I would sign him to be a backup in this hypothetical world where they would in this hypothetical world where it would be a cheap signing. He could come in here and be a quality backup, I think. So I don't know. I don't hate that.
I think Joey's thinking small potatoes here. Frankie said we got to disregard cap space. So I'm going crazy. If we're really disregarding cap space, I think the answer is Lamar Jackson. I think if we want to throw out cap space and throw out finances and whatever, yeah, throw a ton of money at Lamar Jackson. If we're saying that's like off the cap, all right, Walton Penner Group, back up the Brinks truck, back up 5 Brinks trucks, get this guy on the books, bring him to Denver. Let's have some fun football. Let's go. Let's ride. I think Sean Payton could cook up some very interesting stuff. He built a functional offense out of Taysom Hill, which is like Lamar Jackson without the talent. It's crazy. So I think that would be very exciting. A little more realistic one that I would throw out. Buda Baker's a fun one from Samuel Castro, but a fun one that I would throw out is Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, I don't think backup edge or edge depth is the need, but I definitely think it's a need. I think Ngakoue's best served is like a rotational pass rusher who you don't have to rely on to start every snap. But hey, if Gregory gets injured, if Baron Browning gets injured, you feel really good throwing Ngakoue into a starting role. The reason you wouldn't do it is because he's a starting quality edge, and those are pretty expensive on the open market, especially one as productive as him. But hey, if we're throwing all the money to the wind here, give me Ngakoue or give me Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
If we're throwing money away. Oh, you misread it.
I misread that one.
That's okay. Your answer's still valid. Your feelings, thoughts, and everything that you have to say here in the Let's Talk Broncos chat is all valid. Raises glass like a regular to bar. Paul said hi, and I had to highlight that one because Frankie was making me excited. I thought he was saluting something else, but that's okay. Colton Cooper says Taysom Hill.
Ooh, that would be kind of fun.
Oh, he's just taking ricochets per usual. Some strays are flying in his general direction because that's what we do here at Let's Talk Broncos. The chat's popping off.
Sorry, have you seen the contracts the guy's made? He's got a good life. I don't have much sympathy for Taysom Hill. He's got it good. We don't have to shed too many tears. That's fair. If contracts are no big deal, I think that you keep Kareem Jackson around for a really long time and just keep bringing him back to be that veteran. And you knew where I was going here, but honestly, Leonard Fournette would be really cool. I don't think the age is a concern there at 28 years old. Obviously, coming from Tampa Bay, very serviceable running back. I think that could be really good for a Russell Wilson, but I do understand there's a ton of running backs out there for typical cost. But we said forget calorie and cap space, and we would just go for that. My brain is actually not connecting to my mouth right now, so for whatever I say, I'm sorry, guys. That's just how it is. Really fun question, though. We got a ton of them. We asked over on Twitter and in our Discord. If you're not a member already, you should be, because you get to talk Let's Talk Broncos with the rest of us, including draft and free agency talk, all of the fun stuff. We have General Gab selections, so go on over there, join the show. Let's go to the next question from Coop, who's also in the Discord. That's where this question is from. Obviously, Sean Payton knows what he's doing when it comes to player evaluation, but offensive line coaches are also asked to do player evals in the pre-draft process. How much do you think Sean will lean on Streif's ability to evaluate players for a system that Streif has also played in, if at all? And I pronounced his name 2 different times there, so figure out which one is the correct one. Yeah. Guys, Joey, tell me a little bit about how much you think he will rely on his offensive line coach in order to evaluate the pre-draft process.
I think a lot. Honestly, a lot. I think it would be a mistake if you didn't lean on him a lot. You brought him in for a reason. These O-line coaches are often kind of alone coaching. Like, there's not a lot of direction these O-line coaches get. I listened to something where they were talking about that. And I thought it was super interesting. They're often alone. They're putting together a lot of this stuff without a ton of direction. And because of that, you're giving this guy all this responsibility. You should let him coach the players he thinks are going to be successful. Now, obviously, in a perfect world, you would want Sean Payton and Streif to agree. Like, that's pretty much what it is. And George Payton in the ideal world, but you should definitely be weighing his opinion very, very heavily. Especially if you do have him going out there scouting these players and everything like that. Why would you make him do that otherwise? So yeah, I definitely feel like they should.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I do think it's Streif. But I agree. I think you have to factor it in. Sean Payton's this isn't a Nathaniel Hackett situation. He is a veteran coach who's, I think, had a lot of say in the draft for probably close to a decade now. Like he's used to kind of this spot and knowing how to factor in the offensive line coaches say. And so I think that's part of the consideration when you hire Zach Strief, and you look at their relationship dating back to Zach Strief's playing days for the Saints. I don't know. There's clearly a relationship there between the coach and the players. Sean Payton has, for a long time, thought very highly of Zach Strief. Again, highly enough to give him this position. And giving him this position means you trust his player evaluation skills to some extent. So I expect him to be incorporated just as any other offensive line coach would be under Sean Payton, to be frank, which I think is a fair deal.
I think also you'd want to lean a little bit on the position coach to be able to evaluate those players who they want to work with, who may not necessarily be who Sean Payton has an eye on. But I think we're all hoping that Sean Payton is taking his coaching staff, his new coaching staff, all those variabilities, bringing them together and making decisions. But I think that Sean Payton probably has the final say. If he really had his eye on somebody, I think he'd want to take opinions into consideration, but ultimately would be making that final call with the utmost support in his coaching staff and George Payton. So I'm hoping that's the case here. It seems to be, but we shall see in a week. It's just under a week away. So next question, great question, Coop. Thank you so much for dropping that over in the mailbag for Let's Talk Broncos. The next question is from Ray. An interesting question here. We were just talking about running backs just a moment ago. Since running back depth needs improvement, is there any scenario in which we could see Philip Lindsay make a return? This one's interesting considering Phil is now getting a look in the XFL with the Seattle Sea Dragons, which I was so excited to see him back in an orange jersey, also scoring a touchdown in his first premier game, I believe 2 Sundays ago. So that's really exciting to see his level of talent out there again. I think he can still play in the NFL. It's unfortunate as an undrafted player that sometimes who you know and how things work out aren't necessarily exactly your ideal situation there. So I would love to see Philip Lindsay back. Would it be for the Denver Broncos? I don't know. That's an interesting question where I don't know if he would fit in. Just because the depth is there doesn't necessarily mean that his skill set is viable in this situation, specifically when you're looking at the offensive scheme that Sean Payton is building with a lot of blocking ability and pass catching ability. So although Philip Lindsay's never fumbled the ball, I don't know if he had any direct correlation with the efficiency of the passing game. Guys, how do you feel about Philip Lindsay possibly making a return to Denver?
Yeah, I don't see it. Like, to answer his question, is there any scenario? I think there's like a very small chance it happens, because I don't see him returning to the NFL again. I haven't been grinding his XFL tape. I'm very happy to see him doing well in the XFL. I hope he has an extended career. I hope he makes it back to the NFL. But I think what made Philip Lindsay so special was his burst. I think he had like very and his vision. His vision was terrific too, but really like the ability to see that hole and then just fly through it with such lightning quick acceleration. And I don't know if he has that anymore. Against XFL players, which the XFL is going to be a much lower league than the NFL, he's averaging like 3 yards a touch right now, a little less. And so I just wonder, because again, he is a little limited in his ability to impact the pass game. We've never seen him really pop off as a receiver, and then he can't pass protect all that much. And he's not your typical 2-down back. It's hard for me to see him returning to the NFL, though I'm certainly going to be cheering him on. I think it's very likely we see the Broncos add another running back, though. I saw Samuel Castro ask about Austin Eckler. I think it's probably a drafted player, but at a point, Austin Eckler's market is going to get cold enough where I don't know if anyone's talking to the Chargers right now. Like, if we get past the draft and Austin Eckler's still on the Chargers, their leverage is going to be at such a point where, heck, maybe they do have to trade him to a division rival for something really cheap. And I would totally be down for that if I'm the Broncos, because I think he is a dream for this Sean Payton offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to answer this question, I don't think so. And that's just kind of the unfortunate truth behind the situation. If he was going to get his opportunity it would be fresh off the good years he had with the Broncos. The issue is even off those Broncos teams, he really hasn't had an opportunity. Now we're looking at it years down the line. I just don't see a scenario. I think he could be really good in the XFL, and I still don't think he's going to get the opportunity. It's just the way the NFL works. And it is unfortunate because he was a good football player. I would have liked to seen him, get that other opportunity when he just fresh off the Broncos. It just didn't happen. And I think there's just too much time removed between last time we saw him play really good football. It just doesn't seem very likely to me at this point. So I don't think Philip Lindsay is going to make a return at this point.
Fair. Thanks, guys. Frankie has an interesting question in the chat that I want to get to. Break up the little mailbag here. If you're in the chat, you can ask as many questions as you want. We'll see if we can get them over. He asks over on YouTube, who's the Nuggets' biggest rival in the playoffs matchup that you guys would be most excited to watch? Well,
Philly. Sorry, Bree. Go, Bree.
No. I want to hear why Philly.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. I thought you were posing the test. But yeah, I got to go Philly. After all that junk Joel Embiid was talking and how Joel Embiid has dodged every matchup in Denver since 2019, pre-COVID. It's insane to me. I just let's go. Let's see it happen. I think it'd be epic after them battling over the MVP for these 3 years. Neither of them maybe having the playoff success that national NBA media would like to see from these two dynamic centers. I think the two centers that have kind of brought back the position to dominance and have kind of I don't know, just transform things. You had a 20-year gap with the center position winning MVPs, and now that position's won 3 in a row. I think these two guys are, obviously they're responsible for that. They're the modern centers. When we look back at this era of basketball and the bigs of this era, it's going to be Jokic and Embiid. There's been a lot of shit talking, mainly from Embiid's side. I want to silence him. Let's go Nuggets. Nuggets in 5.
Okay, interesting, Zach. I don't mind that answer. Now I have two different. Okay, so he's asking what is the biggest rival, and then also he adds on what we would be excited to watch. The biggest rival is the Suns. That's the Nuggets' biggest rival to me. We could go back, right? The reason this narrative that Jokic isn't a great playoff player is even happening is because in a series where Austin Rivers and Facu Campazzo were the starting guards, the Suns swept us. And then we had the Suns and 4 guy, which was a big fiasco. And then they went out and traded KD, and the Nuggets were the best team in the West almost this entire year. Yet most people now have the Suns winning the West. So I would say the Suns are the biggest rival to the Nuggets. It's also the team that I would not be excited to play because I'm not saying that the Nuggets would lose. I'm just saying I want the Nuggets to get the easiest path. All the people that are talking about, hey, well, if they're going to win a championship, they're going to have to beat the Suns anyways. If they would, no. Give me the easiest path. This is idiot takes. If I have to tank to go down to get a good matchup, I would do that. I'm doing everything to take my advantages in sports.
I was going to poke fun at the Timberwolves for basically being statistically and mathematically beatable in the third quarter of basketball, but I won't go there. I will say it was exciting to watch no matter how bad they were dominated on Sunday. So I'm not going to pick that as the most entertaining or most exciting, but I think you guys covered that really well. Talking about coverage, though, what's interesting this year is that Denver media and fans alike are kind of left a little thirsty with Sean Payton's new approach to media availability and basically the talk of the town of what you're able to know coming out of Dove Valley and the latter. We talked about this a little bit. My cat is joining the show. Sorry about that, folks. Denny asks over, I believe in the Discord, are we as a fan base the equivalent of a child in timeout because of how embarrassing we've been? So now we don't deserve frivolous things like media availability. This one's an interesting point. Nick Ferguson and myself talked about it a little bit on Broncos Country tonight, as there's one person in the media who is able to kind of report on things, that being Mike Kliss, being able to, cover a couple of things, be out there, know what time to show up to Dove Valley. It's an interesting point. Are we being punished? Are we not allowed to know the details? What I'm happy to note, though, is that it seems like an ability to kind of restrict the drama. You are able to control the narrative because you're not allowed to kind of make these frivolous and cheap remarks at others' expense. If you don't have the availability to meet with a player in a locker room after their workout in voluntary OTAs, you can't report anything crazy. So to me, it kind of seems like maybe if it was a timeout, we deserve it. And it's good for the ecosystem of Broncos country, specifically on social media. That's my take on it. Zach, how do you feel? And what do you think? Where do we lie in the lack of media availability?
I mean, I don't know. I think so. One, I don't think it's a punishment, but I do think, yeah, we're getting the chokehold put down on us a bit, and it's the Bill Parcells chokehold. The Bill Parcells doesn't like the media. Disciple Bill Belichick doesn't like the media, and disciple Sean Payton doesn't like the media. The Bill Parcells tree. I also think Nick Saban's kind of off that tree a little. There's at least some mingling there. Doesn't like the media. These guys, they just people off that tree. And then look at all Bill Belichick's disciples who are further down that tree. Don't like the media. It's a consistent theme here. So I think that's what's happening. I agree with Bree's take to some extent. Like, I think it's a positive. It's if your goal as a Broncos fan is just like, I want, no matter like the cost or whatever, I just want what's best for the Broncos. The fact that there's like no media distraction is probably what's best. Now that said, I'd say this is more just about coaches love control more than anything. Sorry, we saw it during COVID when media restrictions got put down a lot. I just know someone who was on the beat before COVID and then went through it as COVID hit. Vic Fangio, another grumpy guy who didn't like media, really enjoyed being able to have a little more control over media access. And I think that's kind of standard with these coaches. They've made it to this level because they're highly detailed, obsessive, hardworking people that obsess over every little detail and how can we control all these little factors to help us win a game on Sundays. And, if they believe media, it hurts that ability in any way, shape, or form, they want to control it. Do I think it's actually all that harmful? No. I would personally, and I'm part of the media, and I don't think it is. Like what report in March is costing them points in September?
Well, it's all about, I think it's about the climate of locker rooms. And I think it's about the climate of what you're telling people and what they're available to and what they're getting to report back and how that changes the narrative within the fan base. And so I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I don't think that it's going to be harmful in the long run if there's less ability to create a narrative around. Think about Bill Belichick, also a part of the Bill Parcells tree. Like there's the identity that you limit the output and then you're able to kind of just keep everything very smooth, which is in direct contention with last season where everything was just out there and it was like a circus.
But everything was out there because like Russell Wilson was putting stuff out through his people and George Payton was putting stuff out through his people. And this shutdown on the locker room, in my opinion, doesn't really impact that.
I think it's part of that. I think it's a part of the puzzle.
I think it is, but I think it's just like all this is really attacking, in my opinion, is like the ability for Damari Mathis to talk to the press. Or like, let's say the Broncos were to sign Ronald Darby back, and all of a sudden Damari Mathis isn't starting, and Mathis is frustrated about that. He won't be able to air that really anymore, unless like he has connection, and he could do it through back channels and whatever. But most of the time when that stuff happens, like these stories or whatever, it's when media is in the locker room talking to players. So I don't think it's a lot of narrative creation, but I do think it's like sharing the player's side of events. I think if you are the coach or you are the team, this is appealing because maybe you don't want the player's side out there. Maybe you only want the coach's side. Maybe you only want the Broncos side out there. And I think this helps accomplish that. However, I don't think having the player's side out there is inherently a negative.
I think that this is better than what the like extreme opposite would be. That is what I will say. When we
Agreed.
had like John Elway and I was talking to the mailman about the Broncos drafting Drew Lock 4 months before the draft, like I'm saying that it's a lot better than that. It's better to keep it in close than have everything out. For any football team, you don't want teams to know what you're doing and stuff like that. So if you're limiting media to a point where you feel as a team, we want this control because we don't want stuff to get out or whatever the case may be, it's better than whatever the opposite would be. And it's probably just them being a little paranoid about that. So I understand it.
I think you to have a new coach who's bringing in a new regime and he wants to run things a specific way. Why not let him run it and see if it does any good than it does any harm? I understand, though, from a player's aspect, they're not able to kind of speak their piece. But in a general sense, it keeps the idea that this is a different era and some coaches do it a different way. I don't think that it's inherently bad either. So it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting question. I want to thank Denny for asking it. Asked it over in the Discord as well. A lot of Discord questions, guys. If you want to get your questions answered, you got to hop on over and join. And also, if you're watching over on Twitter, please jump over to the YouTube or the Facebook stream so you get your questions and comments highlighted. See if Lucy can make another appearance here in just a second. But Cal asked an interesting question. I want to pose it to you guys, because it kind of affects us and how our view of the team has changed maybe over the past season. Have the past few years of tumult affected your fan or media side more? Is there a distinction between those two any longer? And are the limits of optimism for careers that get or have to some extent, see the team basically naked? I would say yes for me. And I'm going to go first just because I've had a very stark and direct change of direction here in my life in the last couple of years. I would say in the last year of going from fan to media and then having to cover the team from an aspect where there's a lot of things I never even took into consideration. Now you take 7 years of kind of like exhaustive tumult, to use the word that Cal used in his question. It's changed the mainframe of like seeing some things that maybe I wasn't even personally aware were happening, but also having it change my lens and my vantage point. So we're all kind of looking at the team from different vantage points. Mine has been all over the place, and it's really opened my eyes to what goes in to specifically team building. And that's what we do here on Let's Talk Broncos, is we discuss the Broncos through a team building lens. So that has completely wiped the slate. I think it's impacted my fan side more because it's changed the way that I relatively look at the sport of football. I'm going to go to Zach next. Talk to me a little bit about the question.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it hasn't impacted my fan side all that much. I was a pretty optimistic fan. I think I tend to be a little. This last season maybe changed that a little bit. But I think that more or less, I'm like still the same fan inside. Like I'm still very honestly like my professionalism is something I probably need to work on a little. I'm in the press box like trying not to cheer and everything, and I'm getting nervous on like the third down stands and all that. Like I definitely think I'm still kind of the same fan I was. On the media end, I feel like I've changed a lot. I think I had, I don't know, a more optimistic, pure view of things. And I think like, not to say that like there's anything especially shady or nefarious. I don't think it's like gross, but once you understand how the sausage gets made, it just makes a lot more sense. And I think it's also given me a big perspective about like a lot of media issues that I think are facing like our greater political sphere in America right now. Like, I think everyone on either side is like, oh, we can't get along. Why can't we agree? Why can't, everyone's, getting partisan media? And just, I think that maybe desire for affirmation in the media as opposed to information in the media is something I've learned a lot about going on this end. And yeah, I think just, I don't know how this gets made. Like a lot of like news breaking, for example, like when news gets, we talked about it kind of in the last thing, how Mike Kliss seems to be the one person allowed to break news. Yeah. Cause he's got the relationships built up, and because he has those relationships, people tell him things which allow him to break news. But he has to break news in a certain way, right? Because he wants to maintain those relationships. And again, he's getting this news broken to him by people he has relationships with. So that news is going to favor a certain party, right? Like it's just how it all works. And I think kind of gaining an awareness to that. And I don't think that's necessarily caused by tumult. It's just something I didn't have experience with. And I've seen up close, and because there's been tumult and changing regimes, I've seen how the different relationships and the different sources have changed faces. I hope people who listen to this show know I try and, like, without getting myself in trouble, give you the most like unfiltered, which is what I'm kind of trying to do in this question, the most unfiltered, honest view of things. And I don't know, sometimes I'll have to be vague, but I'm always trying to be pretty honest with you guys about what I think is kind of really going on. And I hope I can get the benefit of the doubt on that. But that's my answer then.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I guess the big thing is just like something like when I was just more fan, I believe the team aspect thing about literally everything, like whatever agenda they were pushing and whatever that was, it was automatic. I'm believing the team. Like, he would never do that. The Broncos always look out for their guys. What are you talking about? They would let him walk for that. You guys are crazy. He wanted to leave. No, there's a player's aspect to it too. And there's just side isn't heard as much. It's not as loud as the team because the fans, we're fans of the team at the end of the day. It's rare you're going to find a fan that's going to follow a player from team to team. You know what I mean? So I think that's just like the biggest thing. Now, I will say, Zach, or both of you guys, really, like with like social media and, you know, like we're recording on StreamYard and have a computer and all these resources to start our own stuff with that new technology coming out. Fan and media, the difference is kind of blurred a little bit. It's blurred. It's not all the same. Like all three of us are recording here because we are in Denver and we grew up liking the Broncos. I'm not covering the Steelers or the Rams or anything because that's not what I'm as passionate about. It just simply isn't. Now, I think there's different types of fans, right? Like I'm very critical of the Broncos, and that's just the way I look at it. So I don't think it really makes me biased. Like, I'm not looking at it from the Broncos side all the time. I'm looking at it from all the sides because I want what's best for everything involved, I guess. It's the way I look at it. It's blurred. The media and fan thing has blurred a lot through technology getting better and better.
The technology bit on the end makes sense. Thank you, Joey, for that. Great answers, guys. I really appreciate that. And it makes me think about it a little bit more and how those vantage points can change. Let's end the show, or not end the show, but end the mailbag. I'm asking the question. Did you have another point on?
No, sorry.
Cool.
I thought you were
so Zach asked, outside of QB, what's the team's biggest, most important, most impactful X factor? Zach, I'm going to let you hit this one.
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, everybody. We'll maybe go a little over on time. I think the biggest X factor is, does Sean Payton's plan to fix Russell Wilson work? And like, this X factor will change what the next 5 years of Denver Broncos football looks like, in my opinion. Like, what are they going into a rebuild next offseason? How long range is that rebuild? Or are they just getting ready for maybe a new phase 3-4 years down the line? Like, what does the future of the Broncos look like? Are they ready to compete now? Are they going to be a bottom feeder franchise for the next year or two? All of that comes down to, will Sean Payton's plan work? And let's be real, Sean Payton has a plan. He's already made public media comments about what he thought of Russell Wilson's utilization under Hackett, and wanting to improve it. And if anyone can do it, it's Sean Payton. You know, he's an offensive genius. I think that was part of the pitch on hiring this guy, is that, hey, why not invest another first-round pick into this? Because this trade looks so disastrous right now. Like, hey, throw another first-round pick at it, and hopefully it can salvage the situation. If it does, the Broncos are going to be sitting really pretty. I think this roster has some flaws. I don't know if they're competing for a Super Bowl, but if Sean Payton can make Russ, I don't think like super elite again, but like a top 10-ish quarterback again, 9-10, somewhere in there, Dak Prescott-ish range, this team's going to be in the playoffs. If he can't, and they're probably going to have Russell Wilson as their quarterback and as a face of the franchise for the next half decade. If not, if his plan doesn't work, we might be in store for like the darkest season in Bronco, like a true tank season, the first true tank season in the history of Denver Broncos football.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess like, yes, if I'm looking at it from past this year, just what's the Broncos' biggest X factor as it stands, and going way into the future as well, I would also agree with you that Sean Payton is the answer. If I'm going to hyper focus on this next year, it would be edge rusher. I think that's the biggest X factor for the Broncos this next year. The Broncos have Randy Gregory and Baron Browning looks good, and all of this type of stuff is going correct. The Broncos defense is going to be good. If Randy Gregory gets hurt again, Baron Browning hasn't improved, Nick Bonito looks like the same guy, the Broncos defense will take a major step back. That's I think is the biggest X factor going forward for this team. And then of course just injuries, right? But that's league wide. That's not just the Broncos. If you suffer a bunch of injuries, you're probably going to lose a lot more games. It just is kind of what it is. And that's just kind of the variance with football. Like it's just luck. It really is just luck. If you just don't get that injury, that the snake-bitten, injury-bitten team, you're going to have a better chance at winning.
That's fair. Frankie's saying you guys are in lockstep per usual. Development of the young defensive linemen on the edge and interior. I think that's pretty important. What I think is also important going forward is how the organization and leadership in general, that means the ownership group, that means George Paton for however long he's a member of the Denver Broncos, and Sean Payton work to kind of rebuild this team in a way that does recognize their culture and identity for this era, because going forward it's going to have to be in lockstep with one another. I think that if they're not on the same page of what they're trying to build, it could get really ugly really fast, and we've kind of seen that happen in the past. What I'd like to also see trickle down is how the offense decides to build the future iterations of, including targets and with Russell Wilson or without, depending on how the season goes. So I think the X factor is, where do they go from this next season? I don't necessarily think 2023 into 2024 is going to be the answer. I think it's the future. It's past that. We're not thinking of championships and Super Bowls for a couple of years. We're thinking about, how does Denver move on from now? And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe we get some fantastic news midway through the season that it's just all really gelling. But in the meantime, I think we should, continue to chat about it, continue to answer questions from everyone, because I think it's very, very important to do this the way that we are. So thanks for sticking around with us. As always, we're going to end the show with a very special Joey's question of the day. I don't have the budget. That's on it. Goodness.
Okay, guys. Who is a player that the Broncos attained, or whatever the case may be, that you really thought was going to be good but didn't end up working out? Because I have a million of them.
I'm glad you got a million, Joey, because I'm going to steal one of the ones that I think you're going to say, because he is like my all-timer. I was so hyped about him. Carlos Henderson out of Louisiana Tech. When they drafted him, it was so exciting. He was I dubbed the human joystick, and you saw his highlights, and it was easy to see why. He wasn't like a super refined route runner, but just, man, made so much stuff happen in space, was so electric with the ball. And I don't even know if he made it through like his first training camp with the Broncos. I don't think he played in the preseason. Like, he was a second-round pick, was fairly highly touted, and flamed out so quickly. A disastrous pick.
Yeah, it really was. He was supposed to be Debo Samuels. He was supposed to be Debo. He was supposed to be.
He really was. Oh, I think he's compared to T-Mac
if you want,
or CMC.
Let's see. I thought Royce Freeman was going to be a stud. Me personally, I just got to throw that one out there.
Coop just stole mine, which was going to be Monty Ball.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because I think that, even though the impact in his rookie season, it just ended up going pretty south pretty quickly. And that was frustrating, considering he was performing quite well in college. That was a pretty decent one. Paul is saying Albert O.
Alberto. What's the one running back that just ran really hard and straight? He never cut. Devontae Booker. I thought Booker after his rookie year was going to be a monster.
I was a huge Booker believer after his rookie year. And
Yeah.
then I quickly soured on him and was like, for the next 2-3 years, was like, this is the most boring player on the Broncos. Please move on from him.
Oh my goodness. And I think that you were trying to bait me into saying somebody else, but I'm not going to do it because I'm stronger than that.
I would
Oh,
never.
no, not. I would never. Zach, on the other hand, might have like nudged me to say it. He's like, "Are you sure that's who you want to pick?" A couple of Albert O's in here. There's a couple of other comments, but I want to shout out to everyone's extremely hard work. Let's Talk Broncos has been going kind of crazy, reestablishing through the off season, including just a lot of work on the product that you see before you. I want to thank Zach and Joey tremendously for their time and efforts as I sort of waffle through this life and just point out that they have done a tremendous amount of work. All those graphics you see over on Twitter, all of the content that is coming out of Let's Talk Broncos. I want to thank Frankie Abbott as well, because as a member of the Let's Talk Broncos crew, you can see him on Thursdays for Let's Talk Draft. That is expanding as well. So as we move on, there's still a lot of conversations this off season, but we're going to be hurtling towards season 2 of Let's Talk Broncos and the Broncos new season. And we'll be here to discuss all of it with you. I just wanted to point out the tireless efforts from these two as they continue to work on it with entirely different lives outside of this little tiny screen that you see on a semi-regular basis. So thank you both so much for doing everything that you do. The graphics are just becoming amazing. We don't have any formal training. Listen, we threw this together because we love each other as people, and then we decided to like run full steam ahead. So I think you guys should be relatively aware of that fact that this is what happens. This is what we do. This is what we're excited to do. So that fan question just kind of got me stirring around a little bit, but I'll let these guys talk about what exactly they have up in the next couple of days so that you can know where to catch all their stuff. Zach, you go first.
Yeah, tons of CU spring game stuff. The week of the spring game is finally upon us. I'm going to have preview guides for everything you need to know about the game, so check that out. Of course, Let's Talk Broncos, all that good stuff. And can't let Bree shout us out like that. So sweet, and just drop it like that. None of you know what this show was like before Bree joined it because no one was watching it. It wasn't a very good show. She's been the rocket fuel that jump started it all. She's been an amazing host. There's a reason why she's getting all the amazing opportunities on Broncos Country tonight and everywhere else. And that's a blessing to all of us. There's going to be more Bree 303 in our lives. So 850 KOA, wherever else she may be, make sure you're following her and checking it out because it's amazing work. But yeah, Joey, now it's your turn.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody. Yes. I mean, very important. This is just fun for everybody here because we got like jobs and stuff like that. This is just how appreciative we are of everybody sitting here listening to us and everything like that, because like we wouldn't be doing this without everybody. Like seriously, the support is amazing. We love it. We appreciate everybody in here right now listening to this. So yeah, but yeah, so make sure you're following Let's Talk Broncos, please. That's pretty much what I'm going to say to end that. Like, subscribe. That could
share the video if you feel like
I wish we had like a little belt ding, you know. And then
I mean, we do, but I forgot to push it.
like, subscribe, ding. Yeah, and then follow me at JR Dress. That's what I got going on. Yeah,
awesome.
Sure.
Please,
I was on Go Bears head yesterday. If you guys are wanting to see more Rudy Gobert slander, make sure you're following JR Drafts.
Joey was learning French in order to pull this off. I'm just letting y'all know that here. If you want more information about all of my stuff, you can follow me over on Bree Maestas 303. Catch me on the Fan Cave from 1 to 2 p.m. on Mondays. I took today off. I was a little bit tired. Also, I'll be on Broncos Country tonight this Wednesday, so tune on in 6 to 9 p.m. with Nick Ferguson. If you want to continue to hear me run my mouth, that means I'll miss LTB on Wednesday, but I will be missing all of you as well. If you'd like to tune in, text in, I'd love to hear from y'all. So have a good night, and we will chat to you soon. Good night, Broncos Country.
Shut up, Broncos France.